Can we please talk to Dean?
Absolutely.
I love Dean.
Talk to Dean.
Dean!
Oh, you gotta get him on the line first.
Oh.
Dean!
Dean! You're live with Eric and V.
Let's go!
Hey.
How's it going, brother?
Man, it is great to finally call in. I haven't called in on the show in forever, so I missed last week because I was traveling to Virginia, but here we are. So two things, really. One, super proud of you guys, super happy for you guys that on this new adventure. It's going to do great because you guys are great.
Aww. And this.
So I'm excited. I'm excited to, tune in every week and call in every now and then. So,
Absolutely.
it's often.
I'm glad. For people who don't know Dean, Dean is an apologist, someone on the other side of the aisle, and it's living proof that you don't need to actually be angry and vitriolic in order to have these discussions. Dean, before COVID, you actually came and you stayed at my place while you did a seminar on apologetics.
There's a whole story behind how we even got to your apartment. That would take up too much time.
Yeah,
but maybe we'll rehash that at some point.
it was amazing, and just, I mean, you are on the other side of the argument, and we're both total geeks. We are all total geeks about this specific topic. And so I remember you came and you had to get up early the next morning and you're like, okay, I've got to get to sleep. And so you and I stayed up all night arguing apologetics.
Because, and Eric might not remember this, but Eric didn't know that I was a pretty big fan of William Lane Craig. And Eric made a comment about William Lane Craig. And I just looked at him and I said, okay, so we're just going to do this now, huh? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And so we just sat down and we just started talking. And before I know it, we're in, the studio recording. And I look at my watch and I'm like, I've got to be over at the church building at 9 and it's 4:30.
Yep.
So, but no, that was fun. That was one of the more awesome trips that I've actually ever had, because when you tell the story to fellow Christians, sometimes, depending on their background, when I came back from that, there was an older lady that asked me how my trip went. I said it went great. And she was asking, like, where'd you stay? And I was like, oh, I stayed at an atheist house. And she's like, what?
Atheist YouTuber's house, yeah.
At an atheist house. And she was pretty taken aback by that. But, I explained to her how everything, went, and that, atheists aren't rabid.
No.
I have a cousin who's an atheist. I've known him all my life. The vast majority of atheists are nice, decent people that I just happen to have disagreements with.
Agreed. I would say that the jerks probably are, at about the same rate as everybody else, because we're just like everybody else.
Right.
It's, go ahead, B.
Oh, I was just going to ask, Dean, we've got some pretty interesting comments in the notes here. I'm seeing the words moral skeptic, and I'm very curious what you mean by that.
Okay, so here's my question.
Sure.
So obviously, you would have to be a skeptic in order to name your show Skeptic Generation, right? So I guess for the audience who doesn't know what does it mean to be skeptical? And then my question is, how far do you take that skepticism with regards to morality? Because there's this section there's this theory, I guess you could say, in ethics called moral skepticism, which says that moral knowledge cannot even be known and it can't be accessed. And so when you talk about being skeptics, is it just with regards to like the God claim, or do you take it a step further and say, moral knowledge can't be known and nobody can access it?
That's a really interesting question.
It is.
What I would say is that I'm definitely a skeptic about more than just the God claim. I think if I wasn't, then this would probably be called atheist something or other, but I do use skepticism in my everyday life to talk about other things as well. As far as moral skepticism, the asterisk I would put here is that as a philosophy, I don't 100% align with skepticism. Skepticism as a philosophical discipline goes farther than I would. And I think that's the same for moral skepticism, where you cannot know at all, because to me, morality is what we determine it to be, and therefore we can know it. It's not this external thing that we're trying to access. It is an agreement that people make amongst each other and then uphold or not. So I would probably, in a colloquial sense, call myself a moral skeptic, but from the philosophical point you're trying to make, probably not go that far.
Yeah. So I want to take just a step back really quick, because for people who don't have a good idea of what skepticism is, or in practice skepticism,
good call.
It's constantly asking yourself why. Dean, you've got young kids. At what age do they start saying why to everything?
When they're able to start talking.
And unfortunately,
I have a 5-year-old who's really to be maybe more accurate. I have a 5-year-old who has started asking questions of why does she need to clean her room, and why why aren't grandpa and grandma coming down this weekend or whatever. So 5 is
5 is the big why age.
Well, what is probably good for a lot of parents and bad for society is eventually we stop asking why to a lot of things, because I think society culturally, we are conditioned to eventually act like we already know the answers. And so asking that question just kind of diminishes. And so when I look at skepticism, I'm asking why. Why is this the way that it is? And that goes back to, skepticism at its origins. Its purpose was to kind of shake you at your core and recognize that at deep down, way at the bottom of everything, I don't know. Why does light behave the way it does? We can study and study and study, but you get enough whys in there and it's I don't know. And it's scary, but at the same time, very exciting, because it gives us the opportunity to go, hey, we don't know this thing. Let's learn more. Let's explore it. And so when it comes to skepticism, it is an incredible tool. And I think that skepticism should be used everywhere in your life. That said, if you walk around saying, well, there's no way that I can know how much money is in my bank account, you're going to run into some problems. And so make sure that you're using it as a tool, especially to disrupt, to go back to John's question, so that you can disrupt that motivated reasoning or preconceptions that you're bringing to the table that might be influencing your result. Just asking why. And so when it comes to morality, I loved V's answer. I would say it a little bit differently. I'd actually say that it's a category error. Because when you're talking about something existing, right, this is a preconception that morals and morality exist outside of us as some, thing that's not decided on by us. And often it's framed in, well, okay, so we arbitrarily make these moral rules, so there's nothing ultimately, moral. But okay, what does ultimate mean? Well, it's implying that it's outside of us, that there's a God that's giving moral commandments. But then, okay, isn't it just that God's opinion? Then I don't think you can get to that solid, extrinsic moral judgment. And so what we find is it's not, can we be moral? It's we are moral. Why?
Right.
Yeah.
I would agree with let's see here, 15% of what you said. namely that we are moral and why. But no, I think that's a good analysis of the difference between, or the degree to which you both individually couch, skepticism. And I think one of the things that a theist would ask about skepticism that maybe you could answer would be, is what is the difference between skepticism being a tool and I guess skepticism being like a worldview?
Could we reframe it? Would it be similar if I said using skepticism
Sure.
as a tool and using skepticism as a cudgel?
As a what?
As a cudgel? Something to bash people over the head with?
Right. Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Because as a worldview, I don't think it makes sense. When I think of worldviews, I'm thinking of a lot of really complex things, and skepticism is just one part. So I think that there are a lot of people who misuse skepticism and say, oh, well, I'm, skeptical of climate change. Well, actually, we ask why so that we can learn and grow and discover and do as much as we can. The why continues, just the questions change, right? Why, what is our impact on the environment? Okay, why is the world getting warmer? Okay, what impact does that have? Those are all why questions. And so as we're learning it now, we're asking other questions. Okay, how can we stop it? What's the long-term repercussions? But there are some people who stand back and will not look at the evidence and ask new whys, but say, well, I don't accept that. I'm just going to keep asking why. And so it can be tough. And I think that I really don't want to let bad actors take the word. So we're going to say skepticism, and we're going to make sure that we draw the line between ourselves as skeptics and people who are, skeptical of COVID. Is it really a thing, or is it just a government hoax?
Right. There's actually a
got
good.
back yesterday, by the way.
Congratulations! Nice.
Yay! Wonderful. There's actually an
arm
article
feels like I
that
got
we.
hit by a baseball bat.
Oh.
But anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. There's actually an article on our website blog, skepticgenerationanswers.com, that talks about good and bad skepticism, and it teases apart that contrast between skepticism that is used by people pushing conspiracy theories versus skepticism that we're talking about. And as far as I think what I understand you asking, Dean, is why do we use skepticism in one way? It's kind of like the atheist question, right? Like, why do you use skepticism in this way when the Stanford Philosophical Dictionary uses it in this way? And I think that one thing to keep in mind is that philosophy is really fun, but one thing that philosophers like to do is push things to their boundary, right? And push things and have this one worldview that is true across the board and is pure and is the answer to all questions in that area. And that's not how life really works. That's not how people really interact. So it's really difficult to be, quote unquote, like philosophically pure about really any position, because eventually you get up to a point of absurdity. And that's why it's fun to talk about. But for the average person, what you have to do is you have to pick and choose, and you don't have to align with just one thing. You can say, hey, this works for me up until a point, and then I'm going to maybe shift into a more pragmatic viewpoint, but that whole thing can actually interplay really well. It doesn't have to be just one ideology down the line.
So you could essentially be like a Christian skeptic, right?
Oh, yeah.
I could have the worldview of Christianity, but skepticism is a
tool.
Is one of the many tools that I can use to help either support my worldview, call into question my worldview, or just abandon my worldview. Right.
Yeah.
And the hope is that you're doing it for good reasons, right? The hope is that you're wanting the best out of what you understand about the world around you. So yeah, we were just telling John Steingart, that you can be a skeptic in one area, but that doesn't mean that you're a skeptic in other places. And
in all areas.
Yeah. And so it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of work, and you're constantly needing to remember that, you're bringing things to the table you don't realize, and it's motivating the way that you're examining things. But hopefully that helps. This was a really good call, Dean.
And it's been way too long since we've talked, and the next time I get out to Austin, we've got to hang out, and Eric, you and I's got to, or all three of us can sit at the table and have a chat for a recording. And am I allowed to plug next February?
I was just about to ask you if you would. This is our show. Yes, absolutely. Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Announcement. Right. If you're doing dishes or in the car, whatever the case, listening to the show right now, big announcement. Dean, go for it.
In February of next year at the Ohio State University, Eric Murphy and I will be doing a debate on, does the Christian God exist?
That's right.
Yep. I'm going to have to go back to Columbus.
We're excited about it. I'm really excited about it. And I'm
No, I'll tell you a real quick story. Eric. You might not know about this, but I started working on my opening statement like 2 days after we had finalized what was going on. And I sent the title, Does the Christian God Exist? Opening Statement. And it was a blank page, and I sent a screenshot to V on Messenger, and she just replied, "Good luck." And I was like, I love it.
Good luck, man.
It was great. So, all right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, let other people get on the line.
Sounds good.
I miss you guys dearly. I love you guys dearly, and I can't wait to the next time that we cross paths.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Take care, brother.
Bye, Dean.
All right.
Bye.